He was standing in the rain outside a run-down apartment complex in Dayton, Ohio, staring at a letter that said "Final Notice," like it was a death sentence. His name was Tom Bishop, a 54-year-old forklift operator who hadn't been able to operate anything for 3 months, ever since the accident that messed up his shoulder and left him with medical bills he couldn't pay. He used to be the kind of man who fixed issues before they became issues, who handled business quietly, who never asked anybody for help. But now he was the guy counting dollar store coins in the bathroom at 3 in the morning, whispering to himself that everything would somehow work out. It never did. And the worst part was, he still hadn't told his daughter. She thought he was just tired lately, not drowning in overdue bills and shut-off notices he hid under couch cushions and winter coats. But on that rainy Thursday morning, something happened that he couldn't explain. Something weird. Something unbelievable. Because that was the day Ozzy Osbourne walked into his life, changed everything, and left Tom questioning if what happened was real, or some kind of hallucination brought on by stress, sleep deprivation, or fate itself. And it all began with a letter he dropped in a puddle just before someone said, "Hey mate, you dropped this," in a voice he swore he recognised. Tom didn't turn around at first. He thought maybe it was some neighbour or delivery guy. He just knelt down, grabbed the soggy envelope. Then he heard it again. "You all right there? Looks rough." Tom looked up and saw a man wearing a long dark coat, black jeans, and a faded tour t-shirt, like someone who hadn't updated his wardrobe since the 90s. The guy had long dark hair, threaded with silver, and eyes that looked like they had seen everything, the kind of eyes you see on people who have lived too much life. And then Tom recognised him. Not from TV, not from magazines, but from the posters that lined his bedroom walls when he was a teenager. From the voice that sang the soundtrack of his angry years, from the bat-biting headlines that made him a legend. It was Ozzy Osbourne, standing there casually, like he was just running errands in Ohio, like he wasn't a cultural icon who once defined an entire era of music and madness. Tom blinked, wiped water from his face, and wondered if maybe he hit his head harder than he remembered in that forklift accident. Because there was no reason Ozzy Osbourne should be in a cheap apartment parking lot on the edge of town on a random Thursday morning. Tom muttered, "This can't be real," but the man just smiled. One corner of his mouth tilted like he knew what people thought when they saw him. Ozzy said, "Nah mate, this is real. Unfortunately for you, it looks real rough." He pointed to the envelope. Tom didn't want to explain, didn't want a stranger, much less a rock legend, to know how bad it had gotten. But Ozzy had that kind of presence that made you confess things you never planned on saying. Tom said, "I'm about $900 short. Rent, utilities, medical stuff, just everything." Ozzy didn't flinch. He just looked at Tom like he understood. Like being broke and scared wasn't foreign to him at all. Altogether too calm for a man hearing about someone else's financial disaster. And suddenly, Ozzy said something weird, something that didn't make sense. "Come on, let's get a coffee. You look like you need something warm before your whole world freezes over." And the strangest thing is, Tom followed him. They walked to a small diner across the street, the kind of place where truckers went at 4 a.m, and old men stared at crossword puzzles all afternoon. The waitress knew Tom, but didn't recognise Ozzy. Or maybe she did, and just didn't care. Ohio can be like that. They sat in a booth, steam rising from chipped coffee mugs. Tom watched Ozzy stir 5 sugar packets into his cup, like he was mixing a potion. Ozzy asked, "So what happened? You gamble, you divorce? Or just life ruining everything at once?" Tom hesitated, but told him the truth. The accident, the shoulder, the medical bills, the workers' comp nightmare, the unemployment that ran out, the rent increase, the power company demanding 3 months at once. The number stuck in his mind like a curse. $900. He needed $900 or everything collapsed. Ozzy listened quietly, no interruptions, no judgment, just nodding like he'd heard this before. Because he probably had, from fans backstage, from people at signings, from strangers in random moments where something bigger than coincidence puts two people together. Then Ozzy did something Tom didn't expect. He reached into his coat. For a second, Tom actually thought Ozzy might pull out cash right there in the diner, like some miracle, like a hidden camera show, like a divine intervention in leather boots. But Ozzy didn't pull out money. He pulled out something worse. A memory. He said, "You ever had a moment where everything was stacked against you, and nobody believed in you?" "I had plenty, mate. The doctors told me I was finished. Record companies gave up. People wanted me dead more than alive. But someone always showed up at the right minute, and all they did was listen. Sometimes that's enough." Tom tried to smile, but all he could think about were those bills sitting in a drawer waiting to choke him. Listening wasn't going to keep the lights on. Listening wasn't going to keep his daughter from coming home to a dark apartment full of eviction notices taped to the door. Ozzy saw that frustration, and it made him grin. "You think I'm here to preach? No, I'm here to help. But first, you gotta tell me something. Why didn't you ask anybody?" That question hit Tom like a hammer. Tom didn't answer right away. He thought about his daughter Mia, 23, just started a nursing program, working nights at a retirement home, sending him texts with heart emojis and pictures of cats wearing sunglasses. She had no idea her father was drowning. Tom said quietly, "Because I don't want her to think I failed." Ozzy leaned back like he'd heard the most familiar confession in the world. He said, "Mate, the strongest people I know are the ones who admit when they're about to break." And that's when Ozzy reached into his coat again, this time pulling out a small folded paper. Not a cheque, not a wad of cash, just a piece of paper that looked too insignificant to save anybody. Ozzy slid it across the table and said, "When you get to a place where you think ending it is easier than fighting it, read that." Tom stared, confused, but Ozzy stood up and threw a few bills on the table, enough to cover coffee, and said, "You're not done yet, but you gotta decide what you're gonna do next." And before Tom could ask what that meant, Ozzy walked toward the door. Tom rushed out after him, but Ozzy was gone. Just gone. Like the rain swallowed him. Tom checked the paper, confused. It wasn't a note. It wasn't advice. It was an address. A local address, not far away. A street he recognized near the river. Something clicked in his mind that he didn't understand. He thought, why would Ozzy Osbourne be sending me somewhere? Against every logical thought, Tom went. He drove through narrow streets, rain streaking the windshield, thinking maybe this was a scam, or prank, or delusion. But the address led to a community centre. Old brick building, paint peeling, a sad sign that said, "Helping Hand Programme." Tom almost turned around, but something inside said go in. And that decision changed everything tonight. Because inside, he found something that didn't look real. A line of people, mostly older, sitting quietly with folders, paperwork, envelopes. And behind a table, a woman smiled and said, "You must be Tom. We've been expecting you." Tom froze. He hadn't called anyone. He hadn't told anyone. And before he could ask, a man in a grey sweater came to him with a clipboard, saying, "Ozzy said you might come." That sentence didn't make sense. Tom said, What is this?" The man said, "A local assistance fund, emergency rental relief, medical bill hardship grants, utility forgiveness. Ozzy's been donating to programs like this for years, quietly. You're not the first." Tom sat down, stunned. They handed him documents, asked a few questions, scanned his ID. It didn't feel real. It felt like a dream pretending to be paperwork. Within 40 minutes, he was approved for $900 for overdue bills, exactly the number he needed. He didn't know how to react. Laugh? Cry? Scream? But then the woman behind the desk said something that stopped him cold. One more thing. He left you a message." She slid a small sealed envelope across the table, the same size as the bills he'd been drowning under. But this one felt different, heavier, like something more than paper was inside. Tom opened it slowly. Inside was a scribbled note on torn notebook paper that said, "You're not alone. Don't ever think you are. Ozzy." And behind that note, cash. Not $900. $1,500 in 20s and 50s. Tom stared like his brain couldn't compute numbers anymore. He whispered, "Why me?" The woman at the table shrugged gently and said, "Because you needed help. And sometimes strangers show up before family does." Tom walked out with the envelope, clutching it like a lifeline, wondering if any of this was real, or if he was going to wake up back at the diner, still drowning, still hopeless. When he got home, he placed the money on the table, turned on the lamp, and for the first time in months, he didn't feel panic under his ribs. But he wasn't done yet. Something else pulled at his mind. That folded piece of paper from Ozzy at the diner, the one he still hadn't read beyond the address. Very slowly, he unfolded the second half. It was a handwritten line, shaky and simple. "Call your daughter. Tell her everything." Tom's breath caught. That was the hardest part. Harder than bills. Harder than asking for help. Harder than believing a rock legend just intervened in his life. Telling someone you love that you're breaking is sometimes harder than breaking. But he did it. He called Mia and told her about the accident, the bills, the fear, everything. She cried. He cried. She said she would have helped if she knew. She said she loved him. She said she was proud of him. And Tom realized the biggest weight wasn't money. It was silence. It was pretending he didn't need anyone. The money helped. The grant saved him. But the conversation healed something deeper. And that night, something stranger happened. At 11:14 p.m, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but he did. A familiar voice said, "Good, you did the hard part, mate." It was Ozzy. Tom didn't know what to say. He stammered, Why did you? Ozzy cut him off gently. "If you ever think about giving up, call someone first. Someone you love. Someone who can hold you up. Nobody survives this world alone." Tom said, "I don't know how to thank you." Ozzy chuckled, quiet and tired. "You don't thank me. You pay it forward. When you see someone sinking, don't look away. You know how that feels now." The call clicked off. No goodbye, no explanation. Just reality settling like warm light through a dark window. Tom sat there listening to the rain outside, holding that envelope, and feeling something he hadn't felt in months, maybe years. Hope. A strange, unexplainable hope that came out of nowhere, wearing black jeans and speaking with a British accent. Weeks passed. Tom caught up on bills. He scheduled physical rehab for his shoulder. He found part-time work at the community centre, the same place he got help, loading boxes, organising donations, listening to stories that sounded like echoes of his own. One Thursday afternoon, he was sorting envelopes when an elderly man approached him, shaking, clutching a crumpled piece of paper. "I don't know what to do," the man said. Tom recognised that look instantly, the look of someone who had reached the end of their strength. Tom placed a hand on the man's shoulder, steady and calm, and said the same words Ozzy said to him. "Come on, let's get a coffee. You look like you need something warm before your world freezes over." And for some reason, the words didn't feel borrowed. They felt earned. Later that night, Tom sat at the kitchen table, lights on, bills organised, not drowning. The envelope Ozzy gave him sat in a drawer. Not because he needed the money anymore, but because he needed the reminder. The reminder that no moment is final unless you stop fighting. The reminder that sometimes the people you never expect show up in the exact second before you break. He never heard from Ozzy again, not directly, not personally, but sometimes he'd get weird signs. A random receipt tucked into a grocery bag with the name Osbourne. A guy at the community centre humming Crazy Train under his breath. A newspaper clipping taped anonymously to the donation box that said, "If you can help someone, do it." And Tom would smile, not asking questions anymore. One rainy evening, almost exactly 1 year since that day in the diner, Tom walked past a TV playing a documentary about rock icons. Ozzy appeared on screen, older now, face lined, voice soft and slow. He said something that made Tom stop cold, made his skin tighten with recognition. Ozzy was talking about fans, strangers, desperate moments that come without warning. He said, "Sometimes all it takes is showing up, yeah? Just being there when someone's falling. Saved my life more times than I can count." Tom didn't cry, but there was something in his chest he couldn't name. Something grateful. Something forever changed. And the craziest part? Tonight, right now, in this moment, someone somewhere is drowning in silence, thinking they have no one, thinking $900 is enough to destroy everything they have built. Someone is pacing in a kitchen, staring at bills, thinking giving up is the only option. And maybe, just maybe, someone unexpected will show up. A voice will ask, "You alright, mate?" And everything will shift, because Tom learned something he will never forget. Sometimes the greatest rescue in life is a stranger who refuses to walk away. And just before you assume no one will come, someone surprising might appear, someone who knows darkness well enough to guide you through it. Someone like Ozzy Osbourne. But the real question is, when that moment comes, will you listen? Or will you walk away before the miracle happens?